Hey there, did you know that your money wounds are creating a financial glass ceiling? Whether you are making $1, $10, $100, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, or $1,000,000 a year, your money wounds are creating, it's like they're creating this glass box around your ability to receive anything more. In today's live, we are going to be talking about what the heck is a money wound and how do you fix it. There are two important steps in order to see everything that you need to see to be able to identify these wounds and to be able to get them out of your mind, body, soul system so that you can receive in a brand new way and you can shatter that glass ceiling, that glass box that has been placed around your ability to receive. So let's get started, shall we? So the first thing I want to talk about is what is a money wound and how do you know that you have a money wound? So let me give you a couple of examples of things that you might be noticing in your day-to-day life that shows you that you've got a money wound underneath the surface. First and foremost is think about how much money that you are making on an annual basis. If you find that from year to year, especially if you are an entrepreneur, right, where you are the one who's in charge of how much money is coming into your bank account, if you have the same amount of money coming over and over and over, whether you are doing more or less, that's a prime example of a money wound. If you are working really hard and you're putting in more hours and you are taking all the action steps out in the world to have more money coming into your bank account and nothing is changing, or maybe you're even receiving less, even though you are in the action world doing more and more, that is a prime example of having a money wound that's driving the show. Another way that you would know that you have a money wound is if you are able to create more and more money. Your bank accounts are going up and up, and yet you always have something that is causing money to come out. So money in, money out, money in, money out, money in, money out, money out, money out. So you just bring in this great new piece of revenue. Oh, and then here's an unexpected expense, right? So that when you have that kind of back and forth, you have evidence that there is a money wound driving the show. Another thing that you can be experienced that shows that you have a money wound is, let's say that you have money that comes in and you are filling your bank accounts just the way that you want, but when it comes time to pay a business expense, or it's time to think about a vacation, or it's time to think about refurnishing your living room or buying a new car, and your whole body reacts with this squeeze and anxiety and fear, there's a money wound creating that situation. Saving is a really great thing, and we are supposed to be able to also use that money. So when you find that you have a lot of fear gripping you, there's a money wound that's under that. What if it's the exact opposite? What if when you are experiencing fear or worry or anxiety or sadness, or you're really angry, something really frustrating has happened during your workday, or you've heard something on the news that's really upsetting, and what do? You go out and you spend. There's a joke, right? Retail therapy, and that's some of that is part of life. And when that is something, if that when that is the only way that you have to be able to feel better, there's a money wound running the show. The other way you might know is, again, you're completely oblivious to what's in the bank account. Money's coming in, you're paying your bills, but you're doing this when it comes to looking at your balances. Like, I don't want to look. Nope, I don't want to. I know I'm supposed to, but I don't want to. And of course, then the flip side of that is having a constant focus on your bills. I have a client who every day is looking out to the next month's worth of bills and wondering, okay, all of this is paid. And it's not that there's little money coming in. She's got a decent flow of money, and yet the focus on is it always is there going to be enough? I don't know that there's going to be enough. So if you have any of those kinds of scenarios happening, or ones that are adjacent to those kinds of scenarios, you can be sure that there is some kind of a money wound that is creating that situation. And I want to reiterate, money wounds don't show up only when there's a small amount of money. You can have a substantial amount of money in your accounts, or have a substantial amount of money that is coming in, you're receiving, and you could still be being impacted by these wounds. Maybe you're having to work really hard for what it is that you're getting. Maybe you are staying in a job or a business that is painful or is long hours, and the money that you receive in trade for that is a decent number, a number that a lot of people would say, oh well, gosh, give me your problems. And those wounds that we carry about money and our relationship with money can keep you stuck in recreating this cycle over and over and over again. Okay, so please remember that money wounds aren't reserved just for people who can't quite pay their bills. You can be at any level of financial wealth and have money wounds impacting your ability to receive and how you receive. So it's worth looking at what's going on under the surface so that you can move into a relationship with money that has a lot more ease to it, a lot more freedom to it. Okay? So why is it that these money wounds have such an impact on our bank account? When we have these wounds, and we'll in just a moment, I'm going to share where those wounds come from and what the wounds actually are. But when those wounds are present, they keep us following certain subconscious rules. Because of the way our brain is organized and the way that our brain receives information, our subconscious has rules. And that's how we evaluate whether we're going to pay attention to a certain piece of data coming in, or whether we're going to take a certain action. When we've had wounds around money, we start to create very specific rules about how we work with money or how we take action around money. When we try with our conscious mind to take an action step that's different than one of those rules that are present, our body reacts with fight or flight. The whole job of your brain and your subconscious is to keep you safe and alive. When you have rules that you then turn around to try to break with a conscious thought, the brain reacts with a danger message. And that will throw you into fight or flight. It'll throw you into fear. It'll throw you into worry. It'll throw you into anxiety. We don't like those states of being, so we're going to do whatever we can to not have them. So we end up in this cycle of following these subconscious rules without even really knowing why we're doing it. The other aspect of this is that when we have this feeling state that there isn't enough, or that money is scarce, or that we're not going to have what we need. Again, regardless of what numbers in your bank account, when you have that feeling state that there isn't enough, that also sends off alarm bells within your subconscious. And when that alarm bell goes off, we make choices that are going to silence the alarm bell. The problem is that as that alarm is going off, our vibration, our frequency is still at that in that place of fear and worry and anxiety. And our feeling state is how we communicate with the universe at large. When you're in a place of fear or worry or anxiety, that message goes out universally, and what you get back are experiences that match that feeling state, that frequency. So fear and worry and anxiety goes out. Experiences that bring you fear, worry, and anxiety come back. So you end up in this negative feedback loop that says, see, I was right. I was worried there wasn't going to be enough. I got this experience that there isn't enough. Things aren't changing. I was right. And so therefore I need to stay in fear and worry and anxiety. And when we're in those states, we make choices in our day-to-day money experience that don't allow us to step into deeper receiving. Okay. And all of this is happening in the background. And unless you really start to take a look at it, these patterns are hard to see. It's a little bit like if you walked around outside all day with a pair of sunglasses that tinted everything yellow, that's going to start to look normal to you. And if you took the sunglasses off and you saw different colors, it would be very confusing. Okay. So a lot of these wounds come from family of origin issues or experiences, or they're born out of personal experiences that we've had. And it just becomes such a normal state that we don't even realize that there's another way that we can be in regards to money. So let's talk about what some of these wounds might be. And as I said, they can come from your family of origin, they can come from your personal experiences, they can come from the culture at large. So let's start by talking about family of origin wounds. So these are wounds that will come out of a time when you are really small, when you're really young. And when we're young, up until about the age of 7, our subconscious is wide open. We're in a brain state that allows us to learn very quickly. And the way that we learn very quickly is by watching what's going on around us, hearing what's going on around us, and it comes into the subconscious as a rule without any sort of filter. We simply take on what other people believe because that's how our brain is wired. And our brain is wired that way from a long time ago because there wasn't, when we were early on and in community, there wasn't, because there was so much focus on survival, there wasn't time to sit down and say, this is how you make a fire. This is the kind of animal that you should be worried about. This is how you make a weapon. This is the food that we're going to eat. There wasn't that kind of time. So instead, those of us who survived were those of us who had brains that simply watched and took on, watched and took on, watched and took on. Right? So as I said, up until the age of 7, your subconscious is wide open. So if you have people that were around you who had really challenging money experiences, or continually said things like, well, we can't afford that, or wow, that's really selfish of you to ask for that. We can't afford that. or maybe who said things like, and a penny saved is a penny earned. And of course, this bears talking about. It wasn't that your family, the people who were around you, your family of origin, it's not as if they were, these are bad things. For example, saying a penny saved is a penny earned, that could be a good thing, right? It's a good thing to have savings. It's a good thing to be balanced in what's going out and what's coming in. And yet, if you were told, if you what you wanted was that really amazing wagon, let's say, right? And you've seen it in a magazine, I was a kid, and I remember going through the Sears catalog, big, thick catalog would come right before Christmas, and you'd page through the pages and you'd circle the things that you wanted. And of course, there was always, 100 things that I had circled. Let's say that happened, and a grown up in your life says to you, penny saved is a penny earned. So now you've had this experience of really wanting something, and they're telling you that what you're feeling, your desire to have more, your desire to have something, that's not so good. What does that do? It creates a lot of shame around wanting something. Maybe it creates a feeling of guilt that you really wanted this thing, that you should be focused on savings instead of what you want. Right? I have a client who had a parent who, every time he wanted something, she was constantly talking about what needed to be saved, constantly talking about, when you're a good member of the family, you don't ask for anything. So what got instilled in him was, it's not okay to want. It's not okay that I have these desires. And listen, it is human to have wants and desires. As we have wants and desires, we create an expansion within ourselves. It creates this momentum towards aligning with yourself and with the divine and with money in such a way that you expand more to receive more. We're always, always, always going to have wants and desires. And yet, for my client who consistently heard that it's not okay to have a want or desire, that he should be thinking of his family instead of that new toy on the shelf or the bag of candy that he wanted, okay, he brought that into his experience. So consciously, he wanted to have more coming out of his business. He wanted to be creating a bigger flow for him and his family. He wanted a flow that would allow him to take the vacations that he'd been dreaming of. And yet every time, even though he had that money in the bank, every time that he went to think about funding something, he got pulled back internally, because there was a part of him that said, nope, you should be watching out for your family. And you watch out for your family by creating all of these savings accounts, by having money in the bank, by limiting what it is that you want. Okay. So again, it isn't that this client's parent was doing something bad or wrong. She was trying to keep him safe. She was trying to teach him something that would allow him to not have the same kind of pain that she had had, because she had her own money wounds. She'd gone through a time of scarcity. She had gone through times when there wasn't enough. And all she was doing was trying to keep him safe. And yet, here he was as this little kiddo who ingested that and then made a decision about himself. And we'll get more to that here in a moment. So this is how insidious these family of origin wounds can be. Okay, so what else might you be learning from family of origin? Maybe you're learning that only morally corrupt people have a lot of money. Have another client who outwardly her parents were saying it's, follow your dreams, do what you want, and yet when they would drive down the street and see big homes, the comment was always, wonder what they had to do to get that money. What did that leave her feeling? Like, oh, money's bad. Money changes you. Money makes you not so good. Or maybe said a different way, having a lot of money means that you've got questionable morals. Who wants that? Right? And again, it wasn't as if her family was trying to do something mean. They were simply passing on what their feelings were about money. Right? But again, because our brains are in that position of taking on other people's truths, that went to her core. Okay, so that's one category of money wounds. Another category of money wounds can come out of your own personal experiences. So not necessarily childhood. It might come from childhood, but even things that are happening to you as an adult can create a wound that then creates issues with your receiving later on. It could be something as big as going through a bankruptcy. It could be something like losing money in a scam. I had a client who was looking for a job and ended up involved in this online scam. Somebody was going to hire her, and then she ended up, giving out bank account information, and it turned out that it wasn't a real job. And fortunately, she was able to get her bank account closed before money came out. But now there's a wariness. Oh, is what I'm seeing true? Maybe you lent out money and it didn't get returned. And so now you're a little bit more careful about how you work with money. I had a client who came to me, and from 10 years, in a 10-year span before she came to me, she had received two significant inheritances. And when we talked, she said, Jennifer, I've spent them. And at the time, all those expenses seemed like they were important. And yet, because she was having difficulty with money at the moment, she didn't have as much flow as she wanted. She felt horribly guilty and shameful about how she had spent that money. So she was feeling a real grip on what it was that she was bringing in, because she had now created all kinds of shoulds. I shouldn't have done that, right? Shame is such a such a hard emotion. When we're in that place of shame, and if you know any of the work from David Hawkins, he talks about how shame is the lowest frequency emotion, and it's really, really hard to get ourselves out of shame without some sort of external assistance. And we shame ourselves so heavily when it comes to money. I should have done something different. I should have seen it. I should have planned better. I should have known better. Right? Shame and guilt around money are two of the emotions that I see quite a bit in the clients that I work with. And if those emotions aren't addressed, it's really hard to make powerful choices for yourself when you are trying to overcome that feeling of shame or guilt. Then a lot of times we try to fix that shame and guilt through action. Well, the internal logic goes, well, if I just work harder, if I just create more, then I'll be able to let this shame and guilt go about this past experience. And my friends, it never works. It might work for a little while until it doesn't. This is, again, it's where this evidence of money wounding comes in. If you're in action, working really hard to cover up these old feelings of shame or guilt, that's going to work for a while. And then all of a sudden you're going to notice, I'm working twice as hard and making half the money. I'm working twice as hard and money's coming in, but it all goes out before I can do anything with it. Right? Other kinds of personal experiences that could happen are, let's say that you planned a big business launch and it didn't go to plan, and you spent a lot of money and it didn't ever come to be. Or I had another client who planned a huge event with a partner, a JV partner, and something happened. The event didn't go off. They didn't get the number of people they needed, and the person who was supposed to pay for half the costs vanished, ghosted. And for a long time, that created a lot of tension anytime she tried to JV with somebody else. So those are all some examples about personal experiences. And I'm curious, as you're hearing these stories, what are you noticing about your experiences? Are you noticing, are any of your own family of origin wounds coming up? Are any of your personal experiences coming up? And those personal experiences are very potent when they happen to us, but it can also be something that happened to somebody else. My granddad worked for a company for decades, but when it came time for him to get his pension, he discovered that the company had taken the money, so he didn't get his full pension. That impacted my own relationship with money for a long time. Oh, do people not live up to the bargains, to their agreements, to contracts? And it wasn't something that I consciously thought about. But when I started going through my own process of looking at my own money wounds, that popped up, that fear that, oh, maybe you have a contract, but it's not going to be honored. That was something that was part of my story. Okay, so we've talked about things that could happen personally. We've talked about family of origin. Another really potent place that money wounds come out of is our culture. If you have had any type of religious upbringing, religions have an awful lot to say about people with money, what you should do with that money, right? What needs to get tithed to the church, how you should be spending, who you should be while you're spending. And depending on the religion, there can be an awful lot of negative implications about money and how it's received. So take a moment, and if that's part of your life experience, what did your religion teach you about money? Another huge impact that the culture has around money is capitalism. You are only as good as what you can produce. This leads to huge wounds when we try to step into receiving in a way that brings us more freedom and joy and ease. It starts to set off alarm bells. And again, this isn't something that somebody sits you down and says, you're only as good as what you produce, but it's in all kinds of movies, it's in books, It's in the subtext of politics. It's in the subtext of um, all kinds of messages that come at us. And so it's one of those insidious wounds that we don't realize that we're carrying until we go to try to do something and create money in a brand new way. Paired with capitalism, if you are native to the US, native in the last couple of 100 years, there's a subtext throughout the US culture that is part of that Puritan work ethic. You have to work hard. You're only worthy if you work hard. Life is about suffering. Life is about doing hard things. Again, not something that is explicitly said to anybody, but it's woven into fairy tales. It's woven into themes of the books that we read. It's woven into movies. It's woven into social commentary. And it's something that we simply take on as normal. I have to work really hard. It serves the culture, companies who employ people, to have the people who are working for them believe that the only way to get ahead is through really, really hard work. And listen, I am not saying that you should expect to sit on your couch and simply receive. We live in a 3D world. There's always going to be action. There's a lot of value that comes out of taking our gifts out into the world and doing action steps and engaging in meaningful, purposeful work, all of that. I am not advocating that we should all want to simply hold our hands out and expect to receive golden coins. Uh, you know, it seems like that might be kind of fun for a little while, but it's really not how we're wired to be. At the same time, though, we can receive more with so much more joy and ease. We make life so hard for ourselves. All of these experiences, whether it's from your family of origin or your personal experience or coming from our culture, these beliefs create, as we were talking about at the beginning, this glass ceiling or even glass box that we keep ourselves in, and it makes our life so much harder. It makes receiving so much harder. It makes life so much less enjoyable. It's not how it was supposed to be. And yet, the way that we've been indoctrinated is the word that comes up. The way that we've been indoctrinated says, no. And when we have these beliefs, we end up feeling a lot of shame, a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety and fear. And we bring those emotions to our money relationship. Our money relationship is made up of us, so you as an individual, the divine, and physical money. Those are the three elements of your money relationship. When we step into that relationship with all of these wounds, the output of the relationship is money through pain and suffering and worry and fear and anxiety. It doesn't have to be that way. Our money relationship runs at our direction because we are the only ones with free will in that relationship. The divine follows your lead. Money, as a physical resource of the divine, follows your lead. You are the one stepping into that relationship and creating the rules of the relationship. When the wounds are running the rules, the output of your money relationship is less. It comes at a cost. It comes from working really hard. And it doesn't have to be that way. All right. The first step, as we've been talking about, the first step in working with your money wounds is to be aware that you have money wounds. And we've just talked about where those money wounds might be hiding. The second step, and this is a really important step, the second step to releasing these money wounds is to understand what decision you've made about yourself because of these experiences. And we've talked about some of these, but a really big one is, if I don't work hard, then I don't deserve anything. If I don't prove my worthiness through hard work and action, then I don't deserve to receive. And again, remember, these wounds come into play every time you are hitting another level with your money. And if you are working hard to go from 4-figure months to 5-figure months, or 5-figure months into 6-figure months, you can't do enough action to create that kind of money. You have to look at your money wounds. You have to look at these decisions that you have made about yourself. Otherwise, you are going to be working really hard and you're not going to have any sort of work-life balance, and you're not going to create what you want to create. Another decision that you might make about yourself is, if things appear too easy for me, other people are going to judge me. And if other people judge me, then ... fill in the blank, whatever your particular decision is. They'll leave me. They'll laugh at me. I'll be shunned. These, right, these decisions tend to be very primal in nature. If I don't do X, then I'm going to be kicked out of the community. If I don't do X, I'm going to be shunned. It all comes down to survival. And again, this isn't something that you're thinking about with your conscious mind. This is what's going on inside, in your subconscious, in your mind, body, soul experience. So even though intellectually you're like, why would I think that? That doesn't make any sense. When you tune into those wounds and you feel the anxiety and the worry and the fear that are coming up based on those wounds, that's what's running the show on the inside, even if you're not consciously aware of it. What I find fascinating in the work that I do with people is what I see so often is that we're using money as a way to try to fill some sort of internal hole. Money is a fabulous teacher because it shows us what these holes are. And usually it sounds something like, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving. And we are trying to create the money to show, to prove to the world and to ourselves that we are enough. When you start to look at your money wounds and the decisions that you've made based on those wounds, those holes start to, it's like they have a neon sign over them and they're blinking. Here I am, here I am, here I am. And as hard as it might be to feel and see those holes, when you bring them to the surface, to the light of day, now you're able to heal them. You're able to release them from your system and make a new decision. So you are going to look at your money wounds. You're going to determine what your money wounds are by looking at family of origin. You're going to look at things that have happened, your personal experiences. You're going to look at cultural messages. And then you're going to ask the question, what decision have I made about myself? Once you do that, you can start the process of releasing and creating new decisions. What I have found is that making new decisions, creating new rules, creating new belief structures is so much easier when you use some type of a body-based healing tool. And the tool I love to use is EFT or tapping. These tools allow us to access things that are hidden inside of us. And the beautiful thing about tapping is that because you are working at the level of your brain, you're working with all different components in your brain, you're working with your subconscious. As you tap, thoughts and memories and experiences rise to the surface. And you find yourself starting to think of things that you've never thought about before. You know, one of the things when I first started tapping is I remembered a couple of things, one of which I got this image of an old bank that I had. It was this little box, and it had a glass front, and it had like 4 or 5 bars, and there was a tiger, an orange and black painted tiger that was behind it. So it was a little bit like I had this, it was my tiger bank. And I remember hearing from my parents, okay, when you babysit, you take this much money and you put it in long-term savings, and you put this much money into short-term savings, and then this much money is something that you just get to play with. And there was a time in my life where there really wasn't enough to do all of that. Meaning there wasn't enough money coming in for me to be able to do all of those steps. And there was some shame around that. So it's really, it isn't that they did it, again, nothing wrong with that. It's fantastic to have a plan of what to do with each dollar that comes in. And yet I took those rules to be hard and fast. And if I wasn't following that rule, then I was doing something wrong. And if I'm doing something wrong, it's creating anxiety and worry. When I'm in anxiety and worry, I can't make really good decisions for myself. And I'm also putting that out into the universe and getting back more experiences that are creating anxiety and fear. Not a really great feed loop. And when you use some type of body-based tool like tapping, you're able to access that part of your brain that's holding on to that memory. And you're able to separate the memory from the emotions. You're able to calm those emotions so that, yeah, I mean, I'm always going to have that memory of that tiger bank. I'm always going to have that memory of what my parents told me was the right way to work with my money. And I was able to disconnect the experience of not following that rule from feelings of shame. It became neutral. It's like, okay, I wasn't able to do that at this time, and I'm working towards doing something different. And the more that I can feel ease around money, the more money came in because I was allowing it. It felt safe to allow more money in. Okay. So what I would love to do as we wrap up this live today is to do some tapping around any emotions that are coming up about a specific money experience. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and take a nice deep breath. And I'm going to invite you to think about one experience that has come up as you've listened to all of this information. Pick one memory, pick one family of origin experience, or pick one experience that happened to you even as an adult. And I want you to think of that experience and what kind of emotions are coming to the surface. Is it embarrassment? Is it guilt? Is it shame? Is it anger? Is it worry? What's coming to the surface about that particular memory? And then once you have that emotion, if there's several, pick the emotion that has the most intensity to it. And then I want you to think about, let's rank how intense that emotion is. So on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is I have no intensity, and 10 is the most intense expression of that emotion you could possibly imagine, rank what intensity you're feeling about that particular emotion, and then write it down. And then what we're going to do is we are going to do a tapping round about it. And what's beautiful about tapping as a group is that even though I'm using general language to work that's going to be appropriate for the whole community, because you have your specific memory already brought to the surface, you've already brought your emotions to the surface, your body, your brain knows what to release. So what we're going to do is we're going to tap, and then you're going to come back to that emotion, and you're going to rate its intensity. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and tap. And if you're not familiar with tapping, just simply follow along, and I will always tell you what point you should be tapping on and when you should go to the next one. So just follow along and say out loud, repeat out loud the phrases that I'm going to give you. Okay. All right, so the first point we use is the outside edge of the hand. Right hand, left hand, doesn't matter. You're tapping with enough force that you're feeling it, but not so much that you would leave a bruise. Okay. All right, so again, let's focus on either the memory or the experience or what you learned from your family of origin, whatever it is. Let that be right there, present at the surface. Notice what emotions are coming up. Even notice maybe what decision you made about yourself, if you have access to that. And if you don't, no worries. You may hear something as we're tapping. Okay. All right. So, and now just repeat out loud after me. Even though I have this feeling about money, maybe it's worry or anxiety, maybe it's guilt, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I've made some negative decisions about myself because of this experience, and that leaves me feeling ashamed and worried and fearful. I choose to have love and compassion for myself. Even though I'm starting to recognize that this particular experience is coloring my relationship with money. and it has put a financial glass ceiling in place. But I'm not sure I'm ever going to be able to let it go. I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Very good. Okay, so come up to the inside end of your eyebrow. All these decisions I've made about myself, outside of your eye, this fear and worry under your eye, this anxiety under your nose. I didn't realize how much it was impacting me. Under your lip, this old wound that's creating an impact on my bank account today. Collarbone. And this is just right below this bony end of your collarbone towards your sternum, and then down about an inch. There's a depression there, tap there. This old money wound that's impacting my financial flow today. Under your arm. I didn't realize what an impact it was making. Top of your head. I have to feel anxious. Eyebrow. I have to feel worried. Outside of your eye. This old decision that I made. Under your eye. It's been wreaking havoc with my bank account. Under your nose. What if it never goes away? But I'm so tired of where I am financially. Under your arm. I really want to let this go. Top of your head. I'm so ready to break through that financial glass ceiling. Eyebrow. But what if I let this old story go? Outside of your eye. And then I'm not doing enough. Under your eye. What if they don't think I'm enough? Under your nose. All this fear and worry. Under your lip. These old experiences that have created old decisions. Collarbone. I'm starting to see. Under your arm, how these old experiences are being made new every time I think about them. Top of your head, or even when I don't think about them, they're right there in the background. Eyebrow. And that's what I'm bringing to my money relationship. Outside of your eye. I'm bringing worry and fear to my relationship with money. Under your eye. And that's what's creating this glass ceiling. Under your nose. I'm accidentally creating this glass ceiling. Under your lip. And the good news about that is collarbone. I can bring something new to my relationship with money. Under your arm. I can bring love and compassion for myself. Top of your head, I can bring a new awareness. Eyebrow, I can bring a new understanding of where money actually comes from. Outside of your eye, it makes sense that I had those old emotions. Under your eye, it makes sense that I used to feel that old way. Under your nose, and now that I'm aware of it, under your lip, I'm making new choices. Collarbone, I can bring a new sense of trust. Under your arm, I can bring a new understanding of money. Top of your head, I can break through this glass ceiling. Beautiful. Okay, so relax your arm, take a nice deep breath. And I'm going to invite you to take a moment to tune in to the feelings that you were having before we started tapping. Tune into that anxiety or that worry or that fear. And notice where that intensity is right now on a scale of 0 to 10. And notice if it stayed the same. Has it gone up in intensity? Has it come down in intensity? And just note that. Also, this was a very general tapping. EFT really works best the more specific that we can be. But as we tapped as a group, I'm curious what, if any, kinds of thoughts or memories, experiences came up while you were tapping. Those are amazing clues. If you had something come up, and it's okay if you didn't, but if something came up, that's an amazing tool to show you what needs to be released next. Okay? The whole way that you are going to break through that glass ceiling is to gain awareness about your money wounds. What experiences are in the background running the show? What decisions have you made about yourself that are in the background running the show? I'm going to invite you to go to abundanceheartbreak.com. And what you're going to find there is an exercise that you can sign up to receive that I take all my clients through at the very beginning. And it's going to help you identify what is in the background and what decision you've made about yourself based on what's running in the background. And once you have that information, you can use whatever your tools are to start to release that from your subconscious so that you can, in turn, start to dismantle the glass ceiling that's keeping you from making more money. And if this is something that you would like assistance with, drop me a message and let's talk about how I can support you in that. And of course, remember to go to abundanceheartbreak.com and you can get started right away. All right, I think that wraps up what I wanted to share with you today. I look forward to hearing from you. I would love to know. Drop me a comment. Let me know what came up as you identified what was going on for you. What decision did you make about yourself? Let me know. Put that in the comments. And then we will talk again soon. Same time next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.